Hi guys, it's Kyle. I'm at home, so like I told you in an email through the Blackboard, I totally spaced taking my book Wednesday. I was going to record this at the Subaru facility, but I messed it up. So hopefully this will be okay. It looks like there's a little bit of a kind of a glare on the TV there for the PowerPoint slides, but there's not a ton of PowerPoint slides, and you can also pull them up on your side and walk through them if you want. So hopefully we'll make the make do with this. I'm going to break this up and do chapter 10 here, and then I'll stop the video and post a different link for chapter 11. So, so we'll jump in here. Reverse logistics and sustainability. Obviously, reverse logistics. A lot of people think about returns, especially from the consumer end. You buy something on the internet. I think I told you about my Amy buying 3 or 4 different sizes or 3 or 4 different types, and then returning 80% of the stuff. So I think we think of reverse logistics that way, but there are obviously other valuable components that reverse logistics perform. At the bottom there, the book kind of breaks them up into what I'm calling the 5 R's, and recycle, reuse, return, rework, remanufacture, those sorts of things. So we'll go through these each in the book. Again, I'm on 157 here, and just talking about why is it important to have a reverse logistics process. So at the bottom it talks about the total revenue can be between 9 and 15% on your returns. So it's a significant amount, and we'll get into other things with regards to customer loyalty and things like that returns become pretty important. So why does somebody return stuff? Well, obviously you have the case where they just don't want it, but a lot of times it's also damaged product. There may be excessive inventory that they don't need anymore, and they're returning back to you. You've got recycling efforts being done. And then, of course, some sort of, it can be an ongoing sort of reverse logistics when you're talking about remanufacturing or refurbishing parts. You might be just getting rid of old inventory. So maybe they've got outdated seasonal things that they don't need anymore, and they're returning them to you. Or there may be some hazardous waste. So if you flip over to 158, this is where, on this graph you see up here, they're talking, they really list out 4 R's there: recycle, remanufacturing, repair, and reuse. But in the book, they also throw in recall, which is really a component of reuse, and refilling is a component of reuse. So there's actually 5 in the book. So be aware of those R's, the R's of return logistics, reverse logistics. So let's talk about these first. Again, the book starts with repairs and refurbishment. The example that comes to my mind is the auto parts industry. So you do a brake caliper, or you replace your starter, and a lot of times they'll charge you for the core, and you've got to bring back that core device. They then ship the core back to the manufacturer, and instead of starting from scratch, with a brand new caliper, they really refurbish your existing core and get it ready to go, clean it up, repair it, whatever, and get it ready to resell it. And that's the way I think of it a lot. But you also have then damages and defects. So you ship something out that you thought was ready to go, of high quality, and your customer gets it and inspects it and is like, hey, this is broken, or that's not working. Well, obviously you don't trash that unit. You don't throw it away completely. You'll ship it back to the producer. Your customer will send it to you, and you'll do some sort of repair, on that defect to try to bring it up to quality. Oftentimes, then you've got to have a secondary market to resell those items. Very rarely are you going to repair that and then sell it as a new item to one of your customers. So a lot of times, businesses have a secondary marketplace where they can unload these refurbished and repaired items. Refilling, over to the top of 159. We don't see this a ton, but you'll have a situation where I'm taking new product to a customer, dropping it off, I'm picking up their empties, returning it to the plant, filling those empties, taking it back to them. Kind of an old school, route-based sort of process. And not happening a ton, but it's still out there, and that's refilling. We obviously all know about recalls. This is the more of an emergency situation where I've sent out numerous parts and realized that something is defective, and I've got to get notification to my consumers to recall those items. And so sometimes you're just simply replacing those items because they haven't used them or they haven't installed them. But oftentimes, then if they have used them, you've got to do some sort of repair, for those. So we think of car recalls a lot, but there's a lot of different reasons for a recall. The book lists a bunch of them. Remanufacturing, again, very similar to refurbishment and repairs, where it could be a planned process where you're going to send me your used up parts, and I'm going to remanufacture them and get them back up to speed and send them back to you. You'll see a lot of this in equipment as well. So I'll send my whole machine to you, and you'll refurbish it or manufacture it for, get it ready to go for me, and get it to me, get it back to me for use. And then I think one of the more common ones, I'm over on 160 now, is recycling. I think we think a lot about reverse logistics with regards to recycling and waste disposal. Could be the packaging that we're using, could be the raw materials that were coming into us. We have some sort of byproduct that that gets spun off of our during our production process. I think I might have mentioned my friend who has a recycling business, and he just got this machine that basically you can bring consumer goods like food in its packaging and feed it to this machine, and it'll chew it up. It'll spit the packaging in one pile. It'll drain the liquid out to another pile. It'll put the actual nutrients, the food product, in a different pile, and then from there he can give those to different vendors to reduce the amount of waste that's going in the landfill. Very, very cool concept. So spoiled milk. I mean, Twinkies. I mean, everything you can imagine that goes bad. I guess Twinkies don't ever go bad really, but produce. They'll tear the whole greenhouse out of old plants. Those old plants, have nutrients in them, and this machine will process those, and then you can actually dump that food into a swamp with these like bugs in it that produce methane, and these swamp owners will capture that methane and use it for energy, and actually return that energy to the grid. So really cool things happening in that recycling world. And so if you're interested in any of that, there's good career opportunities in there, for new kind of cutting edge things that are going on. So recycling is big. The book then jumps into kind of returns by industry. The slides I don't think jump into this too much. Let's just make sure we got everything off these slides. Yeah, we did. Salvage. Okay. Yeah, we've talked about all of these. So. The only slide they have here is just the amount of returns vary by industry, and that makes sense. So it's just talking about different industry trends. So it gives some publishing, and the slide showing here that your magazine subscriptions, a lot of people are returning those. Not rocket science. Some of the computer waste they're calling e-waste, because it's got chemicals in it or needs to be disposed of in a certain way. And then it talked about the life cycle in the automotive industry, where you've got some parts can be reworked or remanufactured, and then at a minimum the car can be, and the metal recaptured for use. So retail, again, think a lot about inventory become obsolete. So I'm selling a bunch of winter jackets, and now winter's over, and I still have this inventory. I need to return it to somebody, and that manufacturer of those jackets may then have a secondary marketplace to try to unload that returned inventory. So it gets into some of the costs here. Before we get into the process here, let's look at this cost. Just the middle of 161 in your book. you may have to give some credits to your customer. Again, think about a damaged product, your customer's upset. I might have to provide some sort of credit to them. At a minimum, I'm going to have the transportation costs of actually picking the stuff up and bringing it back to my shop. I'm going to have some repackaging, some service costs. I may have to warehouse the stuff for a little while. And then I may have to actually unload it or do something else with it. I may have to send it to the landfill or recycle it. So many different steps of cost involved in this reverse logistics process. I mean, it's the same as the supply chain. It's just going back the other direction. So you have all those same possible costs depending on how complex the reverse logistics part of your supply chain is. So I'm on the bottom of 161 here, starting to talk about the reverse logistics process. And again, it really walks along the same lines as your supply chain of providing product to a customer. We've got to receive it, and again, typically it's a centralized location. So even though I might have on my distribution side, I might have lots of different facilities sending my product out to customers. On the reverse logistics side, more often than not, I've got that centralized. The volume isn't as much. Again, think about we're really just dealing with some quality issues or obsolete inventory. So that need to be as big. So usually it's a centralized location. But again, we've got to gather it from all of our locations and excuse me, and check this stuff in and see what we have. And obviously that check-in process becomes pretty critical because the next thing we want to do then is sort and stage. And we're really wanting to sort and stage things based on what process needs to happen to this item that we've had returned. So the person receiving the product has to be pretty knowledgeable about what types of reverse logistics processes can be done in my facility. So does this part need to go to remanufacturing? Is this part junk? So the person checking in needs to be having awareness of that, so that it can begin to sort and set up and stage those products for whatever next step, whatever next step they need. Then the process itself needs to happen. Again, can vary from repair, replacement, whatever the 5 R's that might need to be applied. So when we're analyzing, so when we're processing that part, again, we're beginning to understand what needs to happen to that part, and that's where the analyzation comes in as well. What they're talking about when you analyze here is understanding what is the best next step for that item that you're checking in, and then of course support is actually getting it to somebody for either the repackaging, repurposing, refurbishing, whatever the next step is. So that's kind of the process. Again, centralized location, stuff's coming in. I'm kind of breaking it apart, analyzing what I have, what needs to happen to it, and then getting it off to the proper area in your facility for that repair. Before we get to this reverse logistics system design, I think there's some really good stuff here on 162 heading over to 163. I think inside reverse logistics, people have kind of considered it as like something we have to do, and aren't really thinking of it again as an extension of your supply chain and as an effort to increase my relationship with my customer. We all had the conversations about, if a customer messes up and yet they recover really, really well, a lot of times I'll have a better feeling about that brand after that whole process. So your reverse logistics has several different components that the book is listing out as potential strategies or benefits to having a really good reverse logistics program. One is they're calling it returns to revenue. Again, if I can bring back a return, and even if it ends up going out in the secondary market, I'm getting now revenue for this product that I produced and still maybe making some money, rather than just junking it or paying to dispose of it. Protecting your profits. Again, you might, if we're doing reverse logistics properly, we are avoiding penalties and fines from the government. Again, think think about waste and disposal of waste, we might be able to avoid that. Customer loyalty, that's a huge one. The book says 95% of customers will not buy from a company if they've had a bad returns experience. And I kind of agree with that. When if you get kind of blown off from the customer, if you feel, as a customer, if you're feeling blown off from your vendor, it's a pretty negative experience. Disposal benefits, again, if we can maximize, things like my buddy's recycling company, where, again, I told you about the swamp, but they're also taking some of those materials. He's got a client that produces a lot of ash, which is kind of, just kind of a rock-based sort of item that is really waste that would have to go to a landfill. He has found a concrete company that will include that ash as a component, as an ingredient into their concrete. And so they'll actually buy that ash from my buddy's customer. And so my buddy's just the middleman. He gets it from the customer, gets it to the concrete place on a routine basis. So now here we go from having an item that we'd have to pay to dispose of to now having an item that someone is paying us to purchase as an ingredient for their product. So disposal benefits are out there, and people are getting more and more creative all the time. And then the last one there is maximize recovery rates. Again, if I can do it more efficiently I can run this process, the better. So we're at the bottom of 163 and hitting just a few other items here. If we have a strong reverse logistics process, it's another way of strengthening our relationship with our suppliers, making it a little bit more difficult for our suppliers to jump from one customer to another. And so it just kind of deepens our relationship. If I have a really strong return policy, I can actually improve customer loyalty. Again, I think back to Craftsman hand tools, and their whole return policy was anytime, just bring us a tool and we'll replace it for the lifetime of the tool. And a lot of people that went into the brand, and the loyalty of why they bought Craftsman to begin with is just knowing that they have that replacement option. So can build a lot of customer loyalty. It can help your customers keep their inventories fresh. So if I have a very strong reverse logistics process and I'm bringing those items back to me pretty routinely, that's freeing up space for my customer then to buy new goods from me, replacement goods, keeping their inventory fresh, keeping their customers happy, but also I'm selling more items because I'm able to take some of the old items off their hands. And then finally, the book touches on, the whole corporate citizenship. Again, if we can document how we are reducing our waste, reducing our landfill efforts, or the stuff going into landfills, all those sorts of items can build us up into the community and make us more, help our brand and help us to appear more philanthropic. Okay, so now the slides have caught up with us. We're over on 164. The system design is pretty intuitive. I mean, again, it's not that much different than you providing your new product to your customer. It's just the other direction. So you have product out there now, and we have to begin to determine where is our product in the supply chain. And then from there, what is the best methodology for us to collect that product? Is it shipped back on so do I have trucks going to them with new product? And if so, can I just pick up the returns then and bring them back? Do I need to prepare some sort of special transportation arrangement to get that product back to me? So that whole process of getting physically a hold of the product and getting it back will vary based on how many facilities you have and what you've got going on. And then recycling or disposal centers, again, could be something we do internally, but a lot of times it's something that we've partnered out with somebody to do, and then we need to document everything. Again, you still have to think about things like theft and damage. Even though the product is already damaged, we don't want to damage it more. So even though the transaction is coming in a reverse logistics manner, we still want to document it. So what are some of the conflicts? Why some of the challenges? They've got retail manufacturer conflict. If we have an inefficient reverse logistics process and the retailer is having trouble getting that product off of its shelves and back to the manufacturer, they can become pretty frustrated. If our actual facility is not analyzing and sorting and then beginning the either repair, reuse, recycle effort, if we're slow with that, now all of a sudden we might have more returns coming in than we have going out in the way of processed returned items. So now all of a sudden we're getting warehouse space we have to pay for, and things can be challenging that way. If we're not tracking things, now all of a sudden it's this giant expense, and we really don't know where that expense is coming from. Is it by SKU number? Like, can we identify a particular unit that is failing for us? Is it by customer? We got somebody that's returning stuff too frequently. We need to be able to analyze what is breaking down, where these costs are being spent. So cause and effect, again, we need to be as certain as we can about why this item is being returned. And then a reactive response. Books talking about management's inattention and lack of importance of reverse logistics has resulted in restrictive policies. This may be in part due to not wanting their returns being used to cannibalize existing sales. So, if we fight our customers, if management is saying, "Hey, look, we don't really want to deal with this," because if we make it difficult for it to return stuff, they're going to go ahead and sell it. Well, it's kind of short-sighted. You're going to frustrate your customer, and you need to have to embrace that. This next graph I don't necessarily love, but it does kind of walk you through. You start at gatekeeper at the top, so right up here, and then you can work around this over 167 on your page. So, like I said, it is what it is. The gatekeeper is screening of defective or unwarranted returned merchandise. It's kind of the first step. Before we get to this slide, the environment reverse logistics, let's make sure we touch on a few other things in the book here over on 168. Employees have difficulty making decisions when the decision rules are not clearly stated and exceptions are often made. It's talking about the distribution cycle time. So again, that employee that's checking in this item needs to know what processes can be done, needs to have a very good understanding of the decision tree. This looks like this, I need to do that. But when management allows kind of a freewheeling sort of return policy, it gets hard for employees to execute. So we want to make sure we have that as documented as possible. Obviously, technology can help us, just like anywhere else. Think of all of the costs, all of the processes, the volumes, all that can be in a database, so we can mine that data and begin to figure out, is there any sort of common problem here. It's talking about the centralized return centers and some of the key important things over there. Again, we might well reduce our labor costs by being centralized versus decentralized, because your employees can get good at handling these returns. We might be able to identify trends in our returns faster because they're all coming through one facility and one information technology system. Might be able to fix quality problems on the production side sooner, because we're seeing these returns in one place and we're able to say, hey, wait, we got this going on, and we're seeing a lot of this. What's happening in the manufacturing side, and make those adjustments sooner. Transportation can be reduced because we're coming to one location, so we might be able to get some economies of scale with putting stuff together. We can help our retailers by getting that obsolete inventory or damaged inventory out of their space so they can maximize the floor plans that they have as well. Okay, so moving up here to the last part of this chapter 10, talking about sustainability. It's kind of a buzzword now, but it's the management of environmental, social, and economic impacts throughout the life cycle of goods and services. And so sustainability is not just what kind of environmental impact do we have when we produce the product and sell it, but what kind of environmental impact does the product have while it's being used by the consumer, and also what kind of impact does it have when we have to dispose of that product. So when you're really looking at sustainability, you're not just looking at those impacts while production is being done, you're looking at it through the life of the actual item. And again, you're looking at its environmental impact, and that's the one we all think of more often, but sometimes there's also a social or an economic impact that sustainability wants to consider as well. So they introduced the term green logistics. My buddy's company I told you is, has the word green in his title of his company. So, it's a common thing being thrown out, looking around or looking to improve companies' efforts at reducing their negative impact in the environment. And lots of different programs. A couple at the bottom of 171 talking about Hewlett Packard and Xerox have adopted an extended product responsibility program, which focuses on the total life of the product, like we talked about, looking for ways to prevent pollution, reduce resource and energy usage throughout the product's life. And again, that's kind of going a step beyond just, hey, do we put more efficient light bulbs in our buildings? This is really the next step in sustainability. Again, that was ERP, or Extended Product Responsibility, EPR. That strategy is also called a closed loop supply chain, which are trying to manage and to encompass both forward and reverse flow activities in the supply chain. So again, this idea of our supply chain doesn't stop when we provide our product to our customer, whether it be a retailer or the final customer. It's not over then. We need to be prepared to service those, repair those if it's defective, get them back and replace them if we need to, and that's what they're talking about with a closed loop supply chain. And then the last page just talks about just some of the efforts that some of the bigger businesses are making. So I'm going to stop this recording, and I'll upload this link as chapter 10. I'm certainly on the other slides here. Yeah, so chapter 11 is our next effort. So again, if you're having trouble seeing those slides on the TV because of the glare, I apologize. Those slides are out there on Blackboard. You can walk through them on your own if you want. Remember that, Monday we're doing a test. So chapter 6 through 11, another exam. Again, I think it's 20 questions, 5 points each, free response. So hopefully we can be prepared for that. So I'll stop this recording and I'll pick back up here in a second with chapter 11. Thanks.